He scraped the long-dried paint off the wall, mixed it with a little water in a spoon, and turned it into paint. He even lined up the fish bones left over from yesterday's lunch and used them as paintbrushes. The tools were crude, but they didn't affect his strokes at all. First, he painted an exquisite lotus. Then he sketched 2 perfect arcs. Every stroke he made was incredibly precise, like it had been carefully calculated in advance. Moments later, a counterfeit stamp so real it could fool anyone appeared in his hand. The man's name was Lee Man, a Hong Kong native who had been arrested by Thai police a few days earlier for using counterfeit cash. There was an unwritten rule in this prison. If you wanted to send a letter home, you had to pay $10 first. Only then would the guards put a stamp on it and mail it out. For Lee Man, stuck in a foreign country, that was a problem. He didn't have a single dollar on him, not even a penny. But drawing was what Lee Man did best, so this wasn't going to stop him. If he couldn't afford a stamp, he'd just paint one himself. While the guards weren't paying attention, Lee Man quietly slipped the letter into the bag. As long as it got mailed, someone would come for him. Just as Lee Man waited calmly in his cell for rescue, the Hong Kong police showed up first. The cops went through all that trouble to extradite Lee Man from Thailand back to Hong Kong, all because a bunch of major cases in Hong Kong were tied to the people behind him. And Lee Man was the only one who knew who they really were.
2年前2月2号，加拿大公路中央银行7个护卫被杀。同年6月，金三角马林游击队82死，157伤。去年9月10号，屯门染厂纵火谋杀案，几个小时之后，尖沙咀酒店加提奇警李永哲划伤洛文被杀。
Police found that several of those murders were linked to an international counterfeiting syndicate. The core team had 6 members: Uncle Yam from Macau, Ms. Hua, and Vietnamese-Chinese members Shum Se Hoi and Bobby. Now those 4 were all dead. Lee Man was one of the 2 still alive, and the other was the mastermind behind the operation, known only as Painter. Painter's identity was extremely mysterious. There wasn't a single clear photo or detailed record of him in any global database. The police couldn't track him down, not because he was clean, but because he was paranoid and extremely cautious. The moment he sensed the slightest suspicion, he'd eliminate anyone who posed a risk. At that moment, police received a bail request for Lee Man, and to their surprise, it was filed by his ex-girlfriend, Yuen Man. Yuen Man was a nationally treasured painter. This time, she didn't come alone. With her were the CEO of a multinational corporation and a member of the executive council. They all signed as guarantors for Lee Man, putting massive pressure on the police. After intense negotiations, both sides reached a deal. If Lee Man revealed information about Painter, he would be granted bail. But Lee Man knew that once he talked, not just Yuen Man and himself, but everyone in that room would be in danger. Yet faced with the repeated pleas of the woman he loved, even though he feared Painter's revenge, Lee Man finally decided to tell the whole story. More than a decade ago, Lee Man and Yuen Man were making a living as painters in Canada's. Unlike his talented girlfriend, Lee Man could perfectly imitate the techniques of master artists, but his own paintings still went unnoticed. To survive, he started working full-time forging famous artworks. One day, one of his forgeries caught a buyer's attention.
这幅棋是死神与魔鬼，是名画家丢了的真迹，5万美金，多便宜呀！
我想见你，画这幅画的。
这幅画，1513年画的。
我是说，画这幅假画的人。
The very next day, that mysterious buyer showed up at Yuen Man's exhibition and began critiquing one of her paintings. He bluntly said the painting looked like it had been photocopied, mocked the painter as nothing more than a copy machine, and even called the piece complete garbage. The man's harsh and cutting remarks made Yuen Man furious. She grabbed a glass of red wine, splashed it in his face, and told him to get out. Lee Man hurried after him to apologize, but the man wasn't angry at all. He said he had actually come specifically to see Lee Man, and the two agreed to meet at a bar.
你也是做假画的？
是象征画，连最顶尖的专家都分辨不出的象征画。这个世界上，100万人里面只有一个主角，当主角的都是能够达到极致的人。如果你想当主角，大有。
After getting the business card, Lee Man hesitated, but wanting to be worthy of his girlfriend, he decided to meet Painter. The two met on a remote hillside, where they began discussing the details. Painter then pulled out a US bill, what he called a realistic painting. It turned out Painter had approached Lee Man to use his printer-like imitation skills to replicate US dollars. Lee Man never expected something this bold. He just wanted to build a career so he wouldn't be looked down on anymore. But he didn't want to become a criminal. Facing Lee Man's hesitation, Painter didn't get angry. Instead, he calmly began introducing himself.
我叫吴福生，香港人，3代都是做假钞的。家族从来没有人坐过牢，因为我们守行规，只做批发， 买家都是当今有权有势的人，他们一直都很保护我们一家。我不敢说自己可以保证什么，但是有一样我可以保证，就是我出产的超级美金是全世界最多人喜欢的象征画。
Painter brought Lehman on board because the US government rolled out a new version of the dollar, and the anti-counterfeiting measures were way more advanced. What Painter truly valued was Lehman's near-perfect imitation skills. He wanted to use them to create a brand new counterfeit template.
今年3月，美国政府推出的新版美钞，改用了迪布莱西斯版本的富兰克林画像，还放大了50%，线条跟细节多了。就算铁像的最高的打印机印出来，也会有摩尔纹。最要命的是，富兰克林的衣领用了微缩印刷，印上 The United States of America。
To break through that security system, the only way was to find a master artist capable of hand-drawing the entire template. With Lehman on board, that problem was solved. But to produce so-called super dollars, they still had to overcome 3 major technical obstacles. Those 3 were color-shifting ink, acid-free paper, and watermarks. Both the ink and the acid-free paper were tightly controlled by the government, making them extremely hard to obtain. As for the watermark, it was created during the paper-making process by altering the density of the pulp fibers in specific areas. Unless they produced the paper themselves, achieving that level of precision would be impossible. But making their own paper would cost a fortune. Painter said he'd figure that part out. Painter then introduced his team: Uncle Yam, the master engraver, the sharp and capable Miss Hua, and Shum Se-hoi and Bobby, who handled security and transportation. One look at the lineup and Lehman knew this was a highly professional operation with clear roles and tight coordination. Over the next few months, Lehman showcased his extraordinary artistic talent. He enlarged the new US bills into countless sections and meticulously replicated the microprinting on Franklin's collar, stroke by stroke. Under Lehman's masterful imitation, a nearly flawless counterfeit template was completed. But when it came to cracking the watermark challenge, the team hit a wall. That is, until one night at a team dinner, when they started playing a game of betting on painting. An ink painting on the table had reportedly surfaced in both Hong Kong and Taiwan, so everyone assumed the one in front of them had to be a fake. But Lehman came to a completely different conclusion.
那2幅是真的，这幅也是。不懂呢，就别吭声。国画裱画师有一门手艺，可以把一幅水墨画一层层揭开，根据宣纸的厚度，一般可以揭3层。顶级画家是力透纸背。 就算揭开3层，每一层都几乎一模一样的。这张墨比较浅，应该是最下面那层。
Lehman's analysis sparked a sudden flash of inspiration in the painter. He immediately figured out how to create a security watermark. If they first made the watermark itself, then sandwiched it between 2 thin sheets of paper, and then pressed the 3 sheets together under high pressure, they could achieve a watermark effect, even adding the security threado. Over the next few months, after producing 17 templates, the team finally completed a perfect plate identical to the original US bills. Now only 2 problems remained: the intaglio press and the acid-free paper. The painter acquired an intaglio press from a derelict printing factory in Eastern Europe at scrap metal prices. They also discovered that the government's communications department used leftover acid-free paper from printing bills to make phone books. The thickness was exactly 1/3 of a US bill, perfect for the painter's needs. So the painter posed as a philanthropist, claiming he was printing educational books for African children, and successfully bought a large quantity of acid-free paper. But color-shifting ink was different. It was the only controlled item that couldn't be bought through channels, so the painter had to acquire it through a heist. On a Canadian highway, the painter planned a clean, precise robbery beneath the lawn. He initially planned to grab the ink and leave, but Lehman noticed a guard in the truck who instinctively fired at the painter. Though wearing a bulletproof vest, the painter wasn't hurt, but he was enraged and opened fire inside the truck. He only stopped once. There were 2 barrels of color-shifting ink left. After venting his anger, he locked the remaining guards in the truck and executed them brutally. This was the painter's first murder, and Lehman's first time witnessing his cruelty and ruthlessness. With all materials ready, they began mass-producing the counterfeit bills. Their meticulously crafted bills fooled everyone, earning rave reviews and growing orders. But to expand the business, just 2 barrels of ink weren't enough. Lehman thought about how to mix his own ink to avoid more murders during robberies. One day, he noticed a car on the roadside whose paint shimmered in the sunlight, showing colors strikingly similar to the ink they needed. Back at the base, he and Uncle Yam began experimenting tirelessly. Relying on his extraordinary sense of color, Lehman actually succeeded in creating a substitute for the color-shifting ink. Eager, he went to show the painter his results. But the painter was hosting a VIP guest, accompanied by a counterfeiting expert, Ning Xiaoqing. Overexcited, Lehman accidentally spilled the ink. leaving colorful blotches on the glass. The painter ushered the guest out and then turned to angrily scold Li Man for his carelessness. Li Man didn't argue. Instead, he shone light onto the glass covered in ing patterns. Watching the colors shift and change, the painter's anger turned into astonishment. He never expected Li Man had solved the century-old ink problem all on his own. Ning Solching, standing nearby, witnessed this, their first meeting. The next day, on the way to the Golden Triangle in Thailand to meet the general, Li Man explained how he had successfully formulated the ink. Years ago, NASA used this ink for the color-changing glass on shuttles, then sold the formula to an auto paint company. Li Man ordered a few barrels and after hundreds of experiments finally matched the exact color on US bills. He then promised to hand over the formula to the painter after the operation, so no more robberies would be needed. The painter admired Li Man's talent, and to keep him on the team, gifted him a luxury villa as a reward. As they talked, they arrived at their heavily guarded destination. It looked like this operation wouldn't be easy. Before the deal, the painter secretly handed Li Man a detonator, then went inside. Sure enough, the general hadn't called them for a deal. He wanted to force them to hand over their printing techniques. The painter refused, and besides, the general before him had killed his father. A personal vendetta, the general thought he had the upper hand. Unaware, the painter knew the full truth.
在7年之前，你在荷兰让俄国人杀了我老爸。要是他还在的话，他绝对不会同意。
你是来算账？你是造假专家，我不相信你这个是真的。
老板，松手！我叫你松手！哎呀，
将军，真正懂技术的是那个姓李的，至于他，杀了就杀了。
松手啊！
As explosions went off, both sides erupted into a fierce firefight. Painter's martial arts were incredible. In just a few moves, he cleared out all the guards around him, but this was the general's territory. Reinforcements on the hills arrived quickly, and the painter was hit several times. Luckily, Uncle Yam and the others arrived in time, taking out half the enemy, allowing the painter to breathe easier. A shell flew past Li Man and hit the building where Ning Suqing was. Hearing Ning Shaoqing's desperate screams, Li Man couldn't stand it and ran to rescue her. The firefight ended. The painter shot the general dead, and to ensure no loose ends, left him a bomb package. This was the painter's second murder, the Golden Triangle Malin Gorilla case. Then they left the Golden Triangle with the burned Ning Shaoqing, and back in Hong Kong, Li Man provided her with the best medical care. Ning Shaoqing was deeply grateful and slowly began to develop feelings for Li Man. But Li Man could never forget Yuan Man. He had Ning Shaoqing's face reconstructed to look like Yuan Man's, and even gave her a passport. The painter's business kept expanding. Around this time, an old client of Uncle Yam referred a new buyer to them. Besides being a plate engraver, Uncle Yam was also the owner of an antique shop in Macau. A few days prior, this new buyer had passed by the antique shop, eyeing a clock inside, which the painter noticed. Paranoid by nature, he investigated and discovered Uncle Yam had bought the clock from Canada with counterfeit bills. The man outside the shop was likely a cop. Using counterfeit cash inside the team was a death sentence. If discovered, everyone in the team would be doomed. Enraged, the painter shot Uncle Yam dead, his third murder. Then the painter led the group to a hotel, the location for his deal with the police. Shortly after, the bell rang. The police arrived on time with $3 million in cash. The painter and his team had been waiting. The police thought the deal would go smoothly. Unaware, the painter already knew their identity. This deal was a setup to take them out. The painter told Li Man to take the items out of the case, but inside was a gun. Li Man's timid reaction made the painter lose patience and decide to act himself. The painter was disappointed too, told him he'd get one last chance, then opened the hotel bedroom door. On the bed lay a group of people, and among them was Li Man's first love. The painter admired Li Man's counterfeiting skills, but his weakness meant the painter wanted him to prove loyalty through murder. Li Man couldn't pull the trigger. Instead, he aimed at the painter. This betrayal enraged the painter, who began firing wildly at the hostages. Li Man lunged forward, holding Yuan Man tightly to protect her. Seeing Li Man in danger, Ning Shaoqing, hiding in the back, stabbed Lin Laihua with a dagger and sprayed with a submachine gun. In the chaos, the painter ducked into the bedroom, but was fully exposed to Li Man's gun. Fearing another attack, Li Man acted first, taking down the painter, then held Yuan Man trembling in his arms. The former lovers reunited, but there was no time for words. The police were arriving. Ning Shaoqing took the $3 million from the cops and ran off with Li Man to a resort hotel. Just as they thought it was over, Li Man saw in the newspaper that Uncle Yam's family had been killed. He realized it was the painter's revenge. The painter wasn't dead. Li Man believed the painter's next target would likely be Yuan Man, so he ignored Ning Shaoqing and resolutely returned to Hong Kong. But while booking a ticket in the lobby, Thai police found him and arrested him for using counterfeit cash. Before being taken away, he glimpsed a terrifying figure across the street. It was the last time Lee Man saw the painter. After Lee Man confessed everything, Hong Kong police issued an immediate warrant based on his testimony and sketches. The police, as agreed, allowed Yuan Man to act on Lee Man's bail application. As usual, the officers showed Yuan Man the sketches of the painter and Ning Xiaoqing for identification. But when she saw Ning Xiaoqing's sketch, she froze, then slowly shook her head, saying she had never met her. Shortly after Lee Man left, an officer came downstairs to relax. Turning around, she saw a man resembling the painter. He was in police uniform with a large bag. The officer suspected heavy weapons inside. She suspected he was there to kill witnesses, and immediately initiated a lockdown. But it wasn't until the cops had them in custody that they realized they'd got the wrong person.
他就是伪钞案通缉犯画家。
通缉犯？我是通缉犯？这是什么乱七八糟的？我是编号28818新界分局的车长吴志辉啊！3天前我刚接你去机场把犯人押回来，那么快就不认得我了？
Officer Ho felt something was wrong. She remembered that on the ride back, Lee Man had been staring at the rearview mirror the whole time. It turned out Lee Man had memorized the driver's face to later fabricate the perfect scapegoat. The strategic, cold, paranoid painter Wu Fusheng never existed. It had all been Lee Man alone. He made the counterfeit bills. He committed the murders. When the police arrived at the hotel, it was empty. Only 2 dead officers remained. Even scarier, the police discovered the painter was fake, and the Yuan Man who came for the bail was also fake. The real Yuan Man, after her fiancé's death, had been sketching in the mountains and had never been to Hong Kong. It turned out Lee Man had reconstructed Ning Xiaoqing's face to look like Yuan Man after her burns in the Golden Triangle. So when she saw the sketch, she realized the man never loved her. On the day of the Tsimsha hotel deal, Ning Xiaoqing had actually brought Yuan Man there, forcing Lee Man to make a choice. When Lee Man picked Yuan Man without a second thought, the others instantly sided with Ning Xiaoqing. They'd long been fed up with Lee Man's brutality. After the chaotic firefight, only Lee Man and Ning Xiaoqing survives. Neng Xiaoqing, turning love into hate, personally sent Lee Man to prison when he recklessly returned to Hong Kong for Yuan Man. But Lee Man understood her feelings, which is why he wrote to her in prison. The letter contained nothing but a sketch of N Xiaoqing before her reconstruction. The letter rekindled hope in Ning Xiaoqing that she and Lee Man could reunite, prompting her to orchestrate the daring rescue. However, that night at the hotel, her hopes were crushed.
那你刚才抱着我的时候，看到的是他的样子，你心里想的是我还是他？
其实像我们这种人，怎么可能得到最好的？能找个代替的，上天已经对我们不错了。只要我们尽量爱得真一点，不就行了吗？
That's when Ning Xiaoqing finally understood. No matter what she became, she was just a replacement. On the fleeing yacht, Lee Man was still pondering their destination when Ning Xiaoqing suddenly stopped the boat. Moments later, distant sirens approached. Ning Xiaoqing had deliberately left clues for Officer He when leaving the hotel. Their boat had been circling in place, never going far. Seeing this, Lee Man panicked and tried to start the yacht, but saw a bomb on the seat. Ning Xiaoqing understood this might be their final resting place and pressed the detonator. With the explosion, the epic criminal case finally ended. Later, Officer He found the real Yuan Man and told her that her fiancé's killer had been brought to justice. Only then did Officer He realize they weren't lovers but neighbors. The so-called 10 years of love had been Lee Man's delusion. Perhaps a few friendly greetings made him imagine this distant female painter as his partner. In truth, they had never known each other. And so the story ends here. Lee Man could weave flawless lies, craft perfect counterfeit bills, invent a painter everyone believed in, but he could never fabricate real love for himself. He thought being strong enough would earn Yuan Man's admiration, but he forgot love isn't counterfeit. No matter how perfect the copy, it's never real. That concludes today's narration. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. See you next time.